Toleration, be the love. Before pride and exaltation, be the love. Be the love.
You are listening to Be the Love, transcending through the shadows into a higher state of consciousness. We are souls on the journey, opening up the conversation to heal, awaken, and connect ourselves and the planet to a higher vibration of love frequency. It starts with you. Everything you need is within you. This is your time. I am Stacy Musial.
And I am Sam Fernandez, and we are your co-hosts at Be the Love podcast. Thank you for tuning in and ascending with us. Hop on board the Ascension Bus.
This is Jules DeVito from Highly Sensitive Humans.
This is Katie Jo Holton.
We are Michael and Jamie Thornhill at Casa Galactica.
This is Tara Jolly.
I'm Anna Anderson, and you are listening to Be the Love podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Be the Love, Transcending Through the Shadows. I am Stacy Musial, your host and soul on the journey. And thank you so much for tuning in this week. And if you've enjoyed listening to our show, we would be absolutely so grateful for a 5-star written review on iTunes. Reviews really help us become more visible and spread the word to others. And if it feels safe for you, I'd like to invite you to take a moment to get centered with us. I would like to begin by inviting you to take a beautiful cleansing breath into your nose and out of your mouth, releasing anything that is keeping you from being present. And take another deep breath in through your nose, breathing in calm, peaceful, loving energy, and breathing out anything you are ready to release. And take one more breath in through your nose, breathing in light and love for yourself, and breathing that light and love out and sending it to all of humanity, remembering that you always have your breath to come back to. Today we have Shirley O'Donoghue. Shirley is a principal of Lucis College in the UK. She has been teaching crystal therapy to practitioner levels along with a host of other energy-based therapies such as Reiki, flower essences, color therapy for over 30 years. She has had 4 books published, with the most recent book, Crystal Alchemy, and has a new book on crystals coming out in 2022. She's also the director of Holistic Harmony, a community interest company which supports disadvantaged groups and individuals. She's a regular contributor to the esotericupdates.co.uk, which includes channeled information and ideas to support holistic living. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Shirley.
Thank you for inviting me, Stacy. Nice to speak to you.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to learn a lot more about crystals today and how we can really use them in our everyday life and our healing. And so first, I'd just like to hear about how did you get into crystal therapy?
I got into crystal therapy about 30 odd years ago now, and this was before the days of the computers and things like that. So I can remember going into a shop in London and ordering my books. They had to come all the way from America. So you guys are way ahead of us in terms of crystal therapy, at least in this lifetime anyway, I think. So I ordered all my books and I did a 2-year crystal healing course. And when I started it, I thought I was just going to do the first year and I was just going to do it to sort of re-engage the brain, if you like, after I'd had 3 children. I had 3 boys under 3 at one point. And but my life completely changed after that year of crystal therapy. I was the work I was doing completely changed, and just took me on a journey that has been amazing and still is amazing. It's just amazing. I think, when you're in the flow, doors open for you. So life is effortless to a certain extent. There's been, I think I've had to push comfort zones and things like that, but I've been really fortunate. Things have just happened very easily for me, really. So for me, it's all about crystals, but I started off with crystals. Then I did lots of other energy-based therapies like flower and gem essences and color therapy and And then I did Reiki, and then I thought I've got to do something sensible. So I did Indian head massage. If that's sensible, I'm not sure how sensible that is. And that allowed me to take crystal therapy into lots and lots of different arenas. So with the Community Interest Company, what we do is we work with people with mental health issues, we work with people with substance misuse issues, and we probably wouldn't get through the door, in all honesty, just by saying we were crystal healers. But because we do a range of other therapies, that kind of gets us through the door. But all the other therapies that we do, we use crystals. We combine with crystal therapy as well. So and we find that it empowers everything else we do. So we've taken it into lots and lots of different arenas. So it's been a real fun journey, and it hasn't finished yet. We've still got lots of other things going on. We're working with a charity at the moment for homeless young people, and we've been in there doing crystal therapy in there with them, just as part of sort of stress management. Really, it's worked really well, and we're now trying to get more funding to continue to go on, to go in and do therapies on a regular basis with them.
It sounds like such a beautiful journey, and being able to offer it to so many different populations that might need that, working with the homeless and the elderly. It sounds like a really beautiful space, and it sounds like you've been in it now for, you said, over 30 years. So you must have seen some of the evolution of crystal therapy. How do you feel like that's changed over the past 30 years?
When I first started, crystal therapy was very sort of a bit out there, a bit woo-woo. And I guess to a certain extent it still is. But what happened, I don't know if it's like this in the States, but in the UK, we used to have sort of beauty therapy, which was one camp, and then complementary therapies, which was the other, and the two were never combined. And then with the advent of Reiki that came in sort of in the late 90s, really over here, it started to sort of merge, and now it's really merged. I mean, we're going to a big exhibition, and we're doing an exhibition over here called Professional Beauty, and we're probably the only people there that are running the courses that we run, but our stand is really busy every time. We've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, and we have queues 3 deep, of people wanting to talk to us about the courses, and maybe talk to us about how they can combine crystals with whatever treatments they give, So the two are coming together, and I think quite rightly so, really. I think there needs to be some, a merging of all of this, so that people that wouldn't normally access it get a chance to experience it. Mm-hmm. And if you do something like a massage treatment and you combine crystals, or reflexology and you combine crystals with it, the client goes much deeper into a much deeper state of relaxation, and just can access some form of spirituality through, whatever that may be for them.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because it sounds like it's really, when things start to merge and we recognize that there really isn't separation between these things, and we can all benefit from them in many different ways, it becomes, more of a cohesive, beautiful journey. So tell us a little bit about crystals and the healing properties that they have.
Well, I think really for me, it's not about getting a crystal that has a label on it that says it does this. It's about getting one that you're drawn to, and then tapping into the energy. So there's a few sort of energy sensing exercises I do with students to start with, and that's really how I got started. I mean, I would never have really gone on to the course for crystal therapy if I hadn't sort of. I was actually working in a shop 1 day a week that sold crystals, and I used to have lots of people coming in saying, "Oh wow, can you feel this?" And I couldn't feel anything. And then one day it was raining, so I just sat down and I thought, no customer's going to come in. I'll just sort of hold a crystal and see if I could feel it. And to my amazement, I felt it buzzing and tingling. And then I picked up another one, and I could feel that buzzing and tingling. But what I'd like to do maybe is with you today is perhaps do a crystal attunement. Mm-hmm. And so maybe this is a good time to suggest that people gather some crystals if they can, and a little bit further down the line we'll do a crystal attunement. We'll do a meditation with crystals, and I can show you how you can tap into the energy of them. But a lot of the ways that most people work with crystals is to look at the color correspondence of the crystal and then link it to the color of the chakra. So we've got 7 main chakras. I'm sure most of your audience will know about chakras. We have 7 main chakras, and there's a purple usually for the crown, or white, indigo for the brow, light blue for the throat, green or pink for the heart, yellow for the solar plexus, and orange for the base, and red or black orange for the sacral, and red or black for the base. So, when you get the crystals that are the appropriate colors, then you just hold on to them, or you can place them. I actually teach my students not to place crystals on the chakras. We actually get clients laying on a couch, and the crystals are placed on the floor, and the clients can still feel the energy from them. And the reason I prefer people not to put them on the chakras is the chakras are not actually physically on the body. They're actually out of the body. They're on the outside of the body, probably 5-6 inches off the body, really. And if somebody is relaxing into a treatment, it's harder for them to relax if they've got crystals on them and the crystal falls off, or they're frightened of the crystal falling off. And also, they've got more chance of feeling the energy around them moving and responding to the crystals if the crystal isn't physically on them, because they can feel maybe the weight or the temperature of the crystal. So we work off the body generally with it. And I don't think there's any students that I've taught now that and I've taught quite a few, that work by putting crystals on the body, because they're just so amazed really at how much more powerful they are when they're on the floor or in the energy field. They're not just on the floor, we're actually working in the aura.
So tell us a little bit more about how we could use crystals to work with our chakras. What are some things that we could do?
Well, what we could do is, whenever you need them, I always talk about the chakras, about a bit like playing an instrument, Right now, my throat chakra would be, and yours too, would be very energized because we're both talking to each other. But, when we finished, probably both of us feel that we just don't want to talk to anybody, and we just want to relax and unwind a little bit and not actually do anything like go out and chat to loads of people, because you've overused it. So you need to give time for it to sort of rebalance. So I guess, crystals, if I wanted to use a blue crystal, I would wear, and I've got a crystal in my pocket actually that's blue, but because of the communication that we're doing today. So I would just bring that into my energy field and carry that around with me, or wear it as a piece of jewelry or something like that, But you can meditate with them as well. If you've got to go into a meeting and you're a bit nervous about the meeting and you want to bolster your self-confidence, then maybe something like tiger's eye, just to support the solar plexus, which is the power center, But if you want to meditate, then using something like amethyst is obviously going to open up the crown chakra and stimulate it. So I always talk about the chakras a bit like playing an instrument almost. When you want to make a sound, you need to give it more energy. So the crystals are like batteries, and they just give you a bit more energy really to support it. For me, that's quite a basic way of working with them. But it's certainly a good start for anybody that is working with them. And it's also quite a cheap way to work with crystals, because really all you need is 7 tumblestones, which are the cheapest probably way of buying them. And you can easily carry those around. Yeah. But I've got a whole host of bracelets, crystal bracelets, all in different colors that go with. So my jewelry collection is something to be seen, really. It's one of the side effects of doing crystal healing. You have a really amazing jewelry collection. But yeah, so I do sort of wear them quite a lot, and work with them in that way. But I also have them in rooms as well. I have crystals around me here. This is the room that I teach in. And I have crystals in here that facilitate teaching as well. So quite a big crystal, big chunk of rose quartz. And I've also got some fossilized wood to sort of help ground people too. So you can use them as room placements as well.
And so I know before we got started, you mentioned the transcendental chakras.
No,
I believe
transpersonal.
Transpersonal. I had never heard that term before, but I'm familiar with the chakras. I'm wondering if you could talk to us about that and how we can tap into the energy of crystals with the Earth Star and all of that.
I think the word transpersonal has its origins in somebody who's an American writer called Katrina Raphael, who was writing books about crystals in the, I think, late 80s, early 90s, certainly. I think Crystalline Transmission was the first book on some of the subsequent books, which was still pre-2000, she was talking about transpersonal chakras. So I think that might be where the terms come from. And that's chakras that are, I think, and a lot of other people feel, are being reactivated. So there's chakras that have been dormant, maybe through different lifetimes where we've lived in lower vibrations, and now that the energy is increasing and people are waking up more, these chakras are reawakening. So I prefer not to call them new chakras, more transpersonal chakras. And I've been working with them for maybe about 5 or 6 years. And my sense out there is, looking at the, on the internet, there are people talking about them, and there's lots of information out there, but it's still not completely coherent. I think it's still something where we're all trying to rediscover what they do. But I've been working fairly intensively for the last 4 or 5 years with the Earth Star, which is one that is just, it's about 6 to 12 inches below the feet, and it connects you to the planet. But it's also a really good grounding crystal, and it's really important because the other crystals connect you more spiritually, I suppose. So the other ones that we've been working with are Stellar Gateway and the Soul Star, and also the Thymus. The Thymus is sort of obviously where the thymus would be, and that's about being able to communicate through the heart. So it's about being able to speak your truth, but also understand other people's truth, which is probably a good chakra for the times we're in at the moment. Yeah. And then the Soul Star is above the head, and that translates messages from spirit into words rather than frequencies. So it's really about people becoming their own channel instead of going outside and having readings from other people. It's about people developing that empathy and that sensitivity to messages from spirit, I suppose, for themselves, so that they get guided in a way that is right for them. And the Earth Star is really important, because if we don't get that anchored, then the information that we're trying to get when we go higher becomes a bit garbled, if that makes sense. And there's also the Stellar Gateway, which integrates and energizes. It's like a transducer of the messages as well. So the two of those two work together very well. And more recently, I've been working with the Gaia Gateway, which is even further down than the Earth Star, and that's really about connecting with elementals and all the kingdom that is beneath our feet, yeah, including crystalline energies as well. So I think probably the sensitivity for people is becoming greater, and they're opening up, even if they're not aware of it. So do you want me to recommend maybe some crystals for those chakras? Yeah,
That would be beautiful. Yeah.
so with the Earth Star, what I often think is use something that is golden. So we use honey calcite, or we use copper sometimes as well. And I also use obsidian too. And I use a lot of shungite to clear the aura before we actually anchor the Earth Star. So we do something called a grid. Now, have you heard of crystal healing being done like that? Are you aware of that? Yeah?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So a lot of people think that crystal healing is just, a chakra set or whatever, but actually a chakra set is a really basic way of working with crystals. If you're going to work as a practitioner, you usually work with grids. People call them grids, nets, placements, layouts. It's all the same thing. It's a configuration of crystals which I put around the body, and I don't use very many. I probably use maybe maximum about 12 different crystals. But what I teach my students to do is to be able to attune to a crystal. So when they're using the crystals, I would expect them to be able to give the client feedback as to what the crystals were doing, how they were interacting with the client's energy field, and so on. And usually it ties in with the client's experiences and what they can feel, So it's an amazing way to work, really. I know I've seen pictures of people having crystal healing, and they have them all over their body, but for me it works very well with just in the energy field. Have you had a crystal healing session, Stacy?
I mean, I've had Reiki where they've placed crystals around me. So that's probably the extent of the crystal healing I've had. But can you But I do, well, just to kind of backtrack on that one. Yeah, so that I felt definitely just super energized by the crystals, and that just added that whole other level of healing during that
Yeah.
session. So that was a really powerful experience.
If you are a Reiki practitioner and you wanted to use crystals within your practice of Reiki, if you look at the color correspondences, so red would be all the warm colored crystals like reds and oranges and yellows would be uplifting and would be energizing. And all the blues and the greens, the cooler colors, would be calming and soothing. So, if you've got a client who's very tired, then you might use, a red or an orange crystal or something around them. And vice versa, if they are stressed, you just use something cooler to calm their energies down. And I would just, if I were doing a Reiki treatment and I wanted to do that, I would just use 6 tumblestones of the same crystal and the same color, and just place them, one at the head, one at the foot, to either side of the shoulders and to either side of the hips. And that, I call that a crystal bath. So if you imagine the aura as being infused with a particular kind of color, and whatever the color correspondence is, that's what the energy would be generated. You can work really nicely with Reiki with that.
What would you use, say, like a quartz crystal with, or like what would be a good practice with that?
Quartz crystals are really good for clearing energy and magnifying them as well. So I would use them, if I wanted to set intentions, if I wanted to clear stagnant energy, I would use clear quartz for that. And I would also, I use them to work on meridians. I use natural points to work on meridians. So I just run the point along the directional flow of the meridian. That's quite a powerful way. Or you can also, if you can dowse over a chakra, you can just follow the flow of the chakra and just use a point to stimulate that flow as well. So I'd use it like that. I'd use it for lots of different things. It's the go-to crystal, really, isn't it?
Right, yeah. I was wondering like what the best practice would be for that, because it is such a versatile crystal.
And also when you get into crystals more, you've got different configurations of crystals. So the crystals all grow in different ways. So, different sort of growth patterns on a crystal, or different appearance of a natural crystal, will tell you something about the energy of the crystal as well. So there's things like record keepers that have got like little triangles, and obviously there's the Murian crystals that have got all these lines on them, striations on them. But you get crystals where 2 points come together and they form together, and they're supposed to be called twin crystals, I think, and they're good for sort of partnership working and stuff. So even the sort of outward appearance of a quartz crystal says something to you.
And so I'm wondering if we can go back and talk a little bit more about the grids and how that can help benefit somebody, and how we can set up a grid.
Okay. So what I would say first of all is that if you're going to do some self-healing with a grid, it's never the same as having somebody else hold the energy. So I firmly believe when we're working with crystals, we're actually co-creating with the crystal, because even if I lay down and just put some crystals around me, it's okay, but it's not as strong as if I've got somebody else working with me. But you can use crystals to do protection, or if you wanted to. So you could grid your home. So you could put sort of crystals like black tourmaline, I suppose, in each corner of your house if you felt that you wanted to have some form of protection there. You can do distance healing on people as well. So if you have a picture of a relative that you want to send healing to, I've got a conservatory out here that faces onto the garden, and not many people go in there really, so I tend to do all my healing in there. But you might have a room that is your meditation room or whatever, and I just have I guess I don't like the word altar, but it's kind of like an altar. It's a sacred space where I work, and so I might put a grid out with somebody's photograph around it if I wanted to send healing to them. But equally, if it was something more general, like wanting to manifest something, I'm still trying to finish off some of the chapters of the book that's coming out next year. And so I have a grid out there at the moment that is just sort of helping me to be creative. So it's just sending me energy, really. Yeah, I'm not sitting in it, it's just sitting there and it's generating it. So that's quite a nice way of working, I think, too.
So it sounds like it's more about the intention with the grid and what you want to say manifest or heal or protect.
Yeah.
And then based on that, you would choose the crystals that maybe you were called
Yeah.
or drawn to.
That's absolutely it. And, you know, I tell my students that the most powerful tool they've got is their intention, because the more they trust the process, the stronger their intention becomes, because they just relax into it. And the better the treatment is, and the more profound they can work, more profoundly they can work with crystals themselves, you know. So yeah, so it's one of those things. It's a real journey. I think you never stop learning. And the thing is, there are, I think, something like 3,500 crystals out there that have been catalogued, and you know, even I'm not going to know all of the crystals, you know, that are out there. And on top of that, some of the crystals that are out there are what I call mongrels. So, you know, they may not have had the correct chemical composition, or they may not have had the right heat sort of at a certain time of their growth. And so they just grow in a slightly different way. So sometimes it's hard to even work out what the crystal is. I don't know if you've heard of amethyst and citrine, but there's a crystal in the middle called ametrine, which is citrine is, it's just amethyst that's been heated to a greater degree. It's got the same chemical composition. It's just been subjected to heat. So if it doesn't get that heat, you get ametrine, which is like an amethyst color, but it has sort of brown going through it, brown lines going through it usually, and lots of rainbows usually as well.
I have seen that. I actually have some of that myself. I'm curious too, like, because if once it's been heated and you said it's the same chemical composition, but does that change some of the properties in it to what you would maybe use it for?
I think, you know, I think some people will look at a crystal's chemical composition, like fluorite has got fluoride in it, and think that it's going to be good for teeth and bones. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work like that. I work intuitively, so I just work with what I'm drawn to, and then I sort of work backwards, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if that does make sense, but it works for me. But I think there's also another guy that was a German. He's died, unfortunately. His name was Michael Ginger. And he was a German geologist, and he got into crystals, and he was very interested in the internal structure of crystals. So for something to be called a crystal or categorized as a crystal, it has to have one of 7 systems in it. And that's kind of veering into sacred geometry. But because there were 7 crystal systems, he started to link the 7 crystal systems to the 7 chakras. So he would say that if it was a hexagonal crystal, it was this. If it was a cubic crystal, which is 2 of the crystal systems, like a cubic crystal would be good for grounding, for example. So he wouldn't look at the colors necessarily, he would just look at the internal structure. So people have got lots and lots of different ways of tapping into crystals, or trying to understand what they do. Also their formations, obviously. You know, if a crystal looks like a heart formation, whether it's been man-made or whether it's just been tumbled and it comes out looking sort of heart-shaped, maybe that's saying something about the energy of that particular crystal and what it's generating, you know. So yeah, there's lots of different ways of trying to work out what they do.
And it sounds like too, because that when we are working with crystals, there's not really a, say, prescribed way to use them, but really the tuning into the energy and finding the crystal that really resonates to you. So it's really about tuning inward and listening to your intuition, to what you're drawn to, what the intention is, and maybe even that energy of the shape or that sacred geometry piece. So it's all about just trusting your intuition with what you're guided to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a book, it's an American book actually, it's called Steps on the Stone Path. And the author of that one, I've forgotten his name now, but the author of that book that's very much what he says is how we should be working with them. We shouldn't be looking for a crystal on the internet that is good for abundance and thinking, oh, I need to get that crystal, you're better off to go into a crystal shop with the thought that you want a crystal for abundance and then go where your eye is drawn. I always think children are really good at showing you how to choose crystals. They just sort of go for, it's not necessarily the nearest one, you know, they just know exactly what they want to go for and they don't overthink it. When I did my teaching degree, we were taught about andragogy and pedagogy, and andragogy is the way adults learn and pedagogy is the way children learn. And the trouble with adults when you're doing this sort of work is that they want to rationalize it and they want to hook it onto something that they already know, and it doesn't work like that. So I find when people are very kind of analytical and rational, they struggle a little bit more with attuning to crystals because they want to know why they picked the right crystal, you know, how they're going to make sure it's right and things like that. Whereas if you're working with a child, they just do it and they don't overthink it. So probably this is a good time to maybe do the attunement if you like.
Yeah, and I was just gonna ask before we get into that, maybe even like using, if you can give us some ideas or how we can use it with the lunar phases, with the full moon, new moon energies.
Yeah, well, I think astrologically there is so much going on out there. Apart from the new moons, there's lots and lots of things going on. So we could use crystals to help us with those phases that we're going through, not just the moon phases, but the astrological phases that we're going through. Because these are challenging times, you know. So I think crystals, working with crystals is not a bad thing. But if we keep it simple and you can get an idea from just talking about the lunar phases, you know, a new moon is all about new beginnings. So obviously crystals that are good for manifesting are crystals that I think you should work with on those days. So it might just be as simple as carrying a crystal around with you on those days, or it might just be writing down the things you want to, some affirmations or something that you want to, you know, help manifest, and putting a crystal, just putting a piece of paper again in a place where it's not going to be disturbed, or in a place where the energy is quite high for you, and just placing that manifesting crystal on top of it and letting it cook and hope that it does its work for you. So you could work with it like that. And I mean, in terms of manifesting crystals, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I guess clear quartz would be a really good one because it's like a magnifying energy. Citrine, I think, would be quite good for manifesting. And I also think carnelian. So carnelian's an orange crystal. I'm trying to think of crystals that are not too obscure so that people can get them fairly easily. So yeah, I think those kinds of crystals would be really good for manifesting. And then with a full moon, it's about grounding, isn't it? And anchoring and really bringing everything home. So with a full moon, I would definitely use grounding type crystals. So obsidian, black obsidian, red jasper, fossilized wood as well. That would be a really good grounding crystal. And again, you work with it in the same way, just sort of using words and pieces of paper, carrying it around with you, maybe meditating with it as well, sleeping with it under your pillow even. Okay. Certainly in a full moon, because actually when most people, I think in a full moon, not most people, a lot of people struggle with sleeping on a full moon, don't they? They find that it's harder to sleep. So again, a grounding crystal would be really good for that, to sleep with it. So those are some ways. You could also make elixirs. You could always put the crystals in or around some water and then just energize it. And if anybody dowses, you know, with a pendulum, you can check the water before you've done that and check it afterwards. But you need to be really careful with the crystals that you use, because some crystals can be toxic. So, you know, just again, I would Google if you want to use a particular crystal. There's not that many, but there are a few that are toxic that you shouldn't put into water. And there's also some that you could damage if you put them into water as well. So something like selenite could get damaged if you put it into water.
And I'm curious too, like how often should we be cleansing our crystals for cleansing the energy? And
well, I tell students to cleanse them when they pick them up and when they put them down. But you know, if they've been in a room where there's been an argument or something, then I would cleanse the crystals then. I mean, you can imagine I've got hundreds and hundreds of crystals here. So, you know, I would just use incense really. I burn incense in the room, and I don't go to every single crystal. You know, there might be one that I feel is overworked, in which case I might put it in the garden for a bit. But generally, I just use smudging or sound, play a lot of music, and I think that helps. You can always tell when crystals need cleansing because they just look flat and they don't look sparkly, you know. So yeah, just do it regularly, but maybe once a week if needs be. But more importantly, I would say do it when you feel you need to.
So coming back to the self, coming back to the intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds like there's more than just one way. I know, you know, some of the ways that I've learned is to put in a bowl of with water with sea salt, but that might not be good with every crystal. And so maybe putting it outside, also under the moon or in the garden or saging, smudging. And so those are
And
some really
tinctures,
good tips.
have you heard of tinctures where you can just, you know, clang their little symbols that you can clang together?
Yeah, yeah.
They're really good, and they're not very invasive either. So
I love that. The sound
I,
vibration.
yeah, absolutely. So I recommend sound really with things like that, rather than water.
It's a really good tip.
Yeah, just because, you know, you could damage something.
And sound vibration super powerful. I mean, that, you know, when you can get a good vibration going, it breaks up the
And you know,
dissonance.
if you train your ear to it when you're using sound, if the crystals are quite in need of a good cleanse, the sound is flat, and then if you keep sounding, eventually you can hear the clarity coming back to it. But you kind of need to train your ears to that.
And what about tuning forks? Would that be another?
Yeah. I mean, the ones I use 2 different types. Some that I use that I put on the body, and then there are the ones that I use around the body, and it would be the ones I use around the body. They're the ones without the sort of little nodules at the end.
Okay.
So I would use those, yeah.
And so, yeah, tell us. I also want to just kind of hear too about some other therapies you've used, and how that you work with the crystals.
Well, because I lecture for an organisation called the Federation of Holistic Therapists over here, and that's an organisation that supports complementary and beauty therapists. So in fact, I was teaching for them this weekend, just gone. So what I do is I look at sort of how we can integrate crystals. Now, over here, and I'm sure in the States it's the same, there's a lot of reflexology now where they're being encouraged to use crystals, incorporate crystals into that and into body massage, but also crystal facials. So we teach a crystal facial, and with Indian head massage, we just incorporate massage stones into it as well. So virtually everything really that I do with Reiki, I'm fairly strict about teaching people Reiki to start with, because I think they need to know what the energy of Reiki is. But once they've actually got it and they know what they're doing, then, you know, we add crystals into the mix, and it really empowers it. I do wonder, you know, I think Reiki works very much on an emotional level. I know it works on all levels, but it kind of specializes on emotions, I think, more than anything else. Whereas I think crystals work on a mental level. So I think when you start to incorporate crystals, there's a shift in your perception and in your perception and your perspective as well. So sometimes, you know, you stop having sort of maybe outmoded belief systems about yourself, like not being good enough or whatever. I think it can kind of take you into a slightly different space. And I think they're very good catalysts as well for change. So I think if you're on the cusp of change, and if we go back to the astrology, if you know what your chart is and you're going into maybe a Saturn return or something like that, they're very good crystals to sort of help you through those kinds of trials and tribulations that we all come to in life, you know. So I think they're great for that too.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm wondering if this would be a good time to go into that crystal attunement that you'd like to offer.
Okay, so yeah, should we just give everybody a couple of seconds to just grab a crystal?
Sure.
What I will just say is that I was taught that you should hold crystals in your left hand for your receiving and your right hand for giving. But, you know, I've been teaching it for so long. I've had so many students say, I rather have it in the other hand, or I'm left-handed. And I think it's just hold it in the hand that feels most comfortable for you. Okay. I think the theory about holding it in your left hand is that it connects with the right side of your brain, which is the intuitive side, left brain, right brain. So I think that's one of the reasons where it's come from a little bit, but I think it doesn't matter. I do hold it in my left hand, but I don't think that should be a barrier. So what I get students to do when they've got the crystal is to just look at it, really. And it's really important not to feel that you need to know what the name of your crystal is. It doesn't really matter because you're going to connect with the energy of it, but I know it helps if you do know the name. And it also helps in terms of looking after your crystals because they're all different hardnesses. So if you put a load of crystals that are different hardnesses, it's a hardness scale called the Mohs scale. If you put them all together in a bag and jingle them around, they'll damage each other. Anyway, we're just going to be looking at one crystal. So if you look at the crystal that you're holding in your hand and look at the shape and the color and the texture of the crystal, and maybe that's saying something to you. Just that. And then I want you to just close your eyes. And I want you to sit back and take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just try and relax. But also, I want you to take your focus to the crystal that you're holding in your hands now. And this time, I want you to focus on the shape again and what it feels like in your hand. And the temperature. And the texture of the crystal. And maybe it's at this point, sometimes this is where people can feel a bit of buzzing or tingling from the crystal, or perhaps it just doesn't get warm. It stays cooler, or it gets very hot. Sometimes people tell me that they can feel a marked change in the temperature. And then just visualize your breath is connecting with the crystal in your hand. And we have palm chakras in our hands. So I want you to visualize the palm chakra in the hand now, just starting to open to receive the energy from the crystal. And as you connect with your breath, just start to visualize breathing the energy from the crystal that you're holding in your hand up your arm. And just breathe it into the elbow. Next breath takes it up to your shoulder. And once it reaches your shoulder, I want you to use your breath to direct it to your heart chakra. And the heart chakra is at the center of the chest at the level of the physical heart. So just breathing it into that center. And getting a sense of how that energy is perhaps impacting on your heart chakra. And then taking your focus back to your shoulder again. Using your breath, I want you to direct another line of energy. And this time the energy is going to your brow chakra. And that's at the center of the forehead at the level of the eyebrows. And just breathing it into that center. And getting a sense of how the energy from the crystal is impacting on that one, on the brow chakra. Taking your focus again to your shoulder, I want you to use your breath. And this time you're going to direct the energy from that crystal in your hand, but you're going to direct it to any part of your body that you want to send it to. And that might be a physical part of your body, or it might be an energy part of your body. It might be a chakra or a meridian. Just breathing it into there. And that's a way that you can do self-healing as well. And finally, I want you to take your focus again to your brow and your heart chakra. And I want you to draw more energy from the crystal now, using your breath. But I want you to send the energy out into your aura, into your energy field. So just breathe it through your heart and your brow chakra and just see it coming out of those two chakras as a fine mist. Perhaps that's the color of the crystal that you're holding in your hand. And see that mist now forming a shape around you that is the shape of the crystal that you're holding in your hand, so that you're now contained within the energy of the crystal. And I'm just going to give you a couple of moments to see if you can take your awareness to just beyond your physical form into your energy field and get a sense of how that crystal that you're holding is making you feel. And when you're ready, you can just release the energy from the crystal. You can release it into the earth if you feel that you want to send healing to the earth, or you can just breathe it back into the crystal in your hand and then bring your focus back into the room.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. I felt very connected with my crystal and just felt that ebb of energy surrounding me. And
Good. I mean, a really good practice is to get 1 or 2 crystals and do the same exercise side by side with 2 different crystals. And then you can start to feel the different energies. And that's how you start to sort of sensitize yourself to the energy of the crystals as well. But I'm sure some of your listeners would have felt buzzing or tingling in their hands, or they would have had a physical sensation of energy moving and things like that. And some people would have felt nothing. You know, it's a very individual thing. And different people will do different things. If you want to practice it, if you want to hone it, what I would recommend is getting a crystal that is the opposite, getting 2 crystals that are the opposite to each other. So, you know, I was talking about warm crystals and cool crystals. So maybe get an orange crystal and a blue crystal. Okay, or a grounding crystal and an ungrounding crystal, something like that. And that's a good way to sort of start to feel the difference in the energies.
and get that contrast. I
Yeah.
like that. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Shirley,
welcome.
for that. And so I'm wondering, can you tell our listeners how they can find you and what you're currently working on?
The book that I'm working on that's going to be published in the States next year is going to be published by Inner Traditions. And it's going to be a bit like Crystal Alchemy, which is the one that's available at the moment. I don't think you can get it in the States, but if you go on Amazon and you go into the UK, you can have a look inside it. And I'll send you a copy, Stacy, anyway. I run a college called Lucis College. It's Lucis. Lucis is Latin for light. So that's why it's called Lucis College. And that's where I do all the training. I do Zoom training. We do online crystal readings. So I do it with a colleague of mine called Kate Winter. So once a month, we just get people to show up on Zoom, and they show us a crystal that they've chosen, and we give them a reading from them. So we do things like that. We've got Esoteric Updates is the website that I think you mentioned earlier. It's esoteric, www.esotericupdates.co.uk. And we are just in the process of revamping it, actually. But we've been putting regular channeling up that myself and Kate do. But there's all sorts of articles from people that are mediums, and also sort of uplifting things to do, and spiritual things that are spiritual ideas that maybe people haven't thought about. So there's a whole host really of different things that I'm doing at the moment.
Wonderful. And we can add some of those links also to the show notes.
Thanks, Stacy.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Shirley, for being here with us today and sharing your experience with crystals. And beautiful to have this conscious conversation. And so thank you for listening to our show. Stay tuned for more episodes being released on Mondays at 5:55 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And if you've enjoyed listening to our show, we would absolutely love a 5-star written review on iTunes. And of course, please share the love by sharing it with your friends. And if you want to support the work that we're doing, please consider making a donation to our show by visiting our Patreon website at patreon.com/Be the Love Podcast. And until next time, love yourself, love each other, and love the world. We love you. We at Be the Love Podcast are honored to be supporting the Kamoti Foundation, which is the nonprofit organization in Uganda that is working to build a school that will promote and support healthcare, education, skills development, feeding the hungry, human rights, and environmental defenders. Their goal is to work with young mothers and single mothers, street children, and vulnerable families who lack nurture as they guide them to become productive individuals, which will lead to a productive generation. Please see our show notes on how to become a donor, mentor, volunteer, or sponsor.
Thank you, Heather Lynn, for providing us with your beautiful song to accompany our show, Be the Love. If you would like to learn more about Heather Lynn and her music, please visit her website at heatherlynnmusic.com. And thank you, Chrissy Grace at Leading Edge Productions for the beautiful design and graphics.
And thank you for tuning in. And until next time, we are souls on the journey. And thank you for hopping on the Ascension bus with us. And remember, there is always a seat for you.